I was listening to an older CD a couple of years ago, and the question was, or the statement that Abraham made was that the path of least resistance isn't always the easiest. And I've listened to that 3 or 4 times, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Well, let's talk about it from the perspective that we've been talking about here, because we talked about the path of books that we've written, and the discussion points that were at the basis of each of those books. And even recently, as we were talking about this vortex, saying get in the vortex, even wrote a book called Getting into the Vortex. It implies, and we mean it, that there's just one big, really good vortex that you want to get into. But every thought that you think sets things in motion. And so today, while we want you to know that there is this vortex that Source is focused upon that is so dominant, we also want you to acknowledge that there are other vortices that you've set into motion, sort of streams. Man's negative thought has created a lot of different scenarios that if you get, because of whatever vibrational disc you're choosing in this now powerful point of attraction, if you get on the Henri disc, you're going to be gathering from a vibrational reality that is not the vibrational reality that Source is tending to. So in the same way that we were talking about the vortex, and then later explained that there are a lot of vortices because every thought has set something into motion that will manifest if you get your momentum going toward it. So there was a time when we were talking about the path of least resistance, like we were talking about the vortex, that there is a path toward what you want and who you are. Right. But there are paths toward those other vortices too. In other words, sometimes you get on one of those paths towards something that you do not want, and the tug of war that is within you. In other words, what we were trying to define is, it's the leverage. We almost got to that point in the last conversation. It's a sentence that we want to insert in the beginning of this conversation, that the path of least resistance is created by the momentum of law of attraction. And we want to say that there is such leverage in alignment, because when you tap into the frequency of who you really are, the momentum of that energy is so momentous that the power of it is nearly indescribable. In other words, tapping into this source energy and flowing it towards something is so much more powerful than being out there on that raw and ragged edge of orneriness and trying to make things happen through your action and words and behavior. In other words, you just can't demand things into place like you can appreciate things into place. There's so much more leverage in that. And so that is what that discussion was about, is that sometimes the path of least resistance is taking you to where you don't want to go, but you can never let this source that is always calling you never lets go of you, never lets go of you. So when you're on that path towards something that you do not want, even though you're on this path of least resistance because that's the vibration that you've got going, it doesn't feel good. It's only when you're on the path of who you really are and what you're really wanting that you feel ease and flow about it. Is that clear?
Yes.
So, is it confusing that there are vortices all over the place that you've set into motion because of thoughts that you've been thinking? Makes sense, doesn't it? Right. There are all kinds of things ready to pop into reality depending upon what you're giving your attention to. And the path of least resistance, when someone says, it feels like my thoughts are thinking me, that's a path of least resistance. But this is for sure, for sure, for sure. When you are on a path of least resistance towards something unwanted, there's negative emotion present within you, letting you know that you are moving away from, not toward, who you really are and what you really want.
Very good. I'd like to fine-tune on something, and I heard it, and it just feels like to me there's maybe a vibrational variance in there. And if there is, flesh this out. Making peace with what is and making peace with where you are. Do you see that as, is there any variance in that, or can there be?
Well, they seem the same to us because where you are is your perspective of what is. Because life is a perceptual thing. Mm-hmm. There's no reality that really is, other than how it is perceived by the person who is perceiving what is.
Right. So
where you are and what is feel like the same thing. So flesh that out a little more for us.
Well, when I think of making peace with what is, I think of what is, my visual, my sensual experience of my now reality. But maybe making peace with where you are is more of an internal process as opposed to an external process. So that's what I thought I was hearing or maybe feeling.
Well, let's talk about making peace. Let's assume they're the same thing rather than splitting hairs about them, because it really doesn't matter very much.
Okay.
But let's talk about the importance of making peace with what is, because there are some who feel that if they make peace with what is, then what is will stay. And if what is isn't something that they want, then making peace with it seems like the wrong thing and they should protest against it. But when we say make peace with what is, what we mean is make peace. What we mean is find vibrational alignment with who you are. What we mean is try to see what is right here and now from your perspective as best you can, as Source is seeing it. And we promise you, Source is not warring against what is. You're really going to like this, because we said the key words to the understanding of this a few minutes ago when we said what you're really trying to do is through waking up and meditating, or is put yourself in, as best you can, this neutral zone early in the day, so that who you really are, the vortex that is really who you are, can call you there. And that's what making peace with where you are, making peace with who you are, making peace with what is does. There's no resistance conjured within you as you see the wrongness of that and that I don't want that. In other words, you're just letting go of your resistance as best you can. And in that neutrality that is now your vibration, the vortex can draw you in, or you can receive what's there. Mm-hmm. Now, it feels like a little contradiction, as we call it neutrality, unless what we are really speaking of on this high-flying disc is that neutrality. And in that neutrality, we're talking about absence of resistance. In other words, on this high-flying disc, there is no resistance. There's no pushing against anything. If you have no resistance within you. Now, when you are in passion, is there no resistance? We say yes. High-flying disc, no resistance, lots of momentum. If you are in a state of love, are you on the high-flying disc? Yes. Is there resistance? No. High-flying disc, no resistance, you see. Mm-hmm. Making peace with it. Practice, making, we could even say, get up in the morning, make peace with your day. Make peace with your pillow. Make peace with your bed. Make peace with your family. Make peace with your world. Make peace with your body. In other words, appreciate as best you can, and watch what happens. Mm-hmm. Did we clarify?
I think so. I'd like to, certainly within the past, 2 days ago, the news of Nelson Mandela's transition into the non-physical certainly has made worldwide attention. Can you speak to us from his perspective now on freedom and equality now that he is no longer in his physical body?
Everyone, happily. All who exist in this human expression of life are equal in more senses than has ever been accurately described. Because all, without exception, are being offered from source equally: love, acknowledgement, and life. When, as individuals, you accept that you are equal in what's being offered, and you find a way to let it in, then and only then do you understand the equality that has always been there.
And the freedom? The perspective of freedom?
Well, what is more free than that? What is more free than to have source at your back? What is more free than to have a source who understands everything that you've lived and everything that you've come to want, who is flowing clarity and ideas toward you to help you to experience in fullness everything that you want? What could be more free than a vibrational reality that is based upon thought, and you are the only one who can think your thought? Could there be greater freedom?
No.
There could be a misunderstanding of it. There could be a misjudgment of it. There could be a misusing of it. There could be a standing at the end of some momentum where you don't feel free, and then you perpetuate your explanation about why you're not free. But you're really going to like it when you make your transition into non-physical and take your first full breath of freedom.
But we don't have to wait.
You don't have to wait. But for many, that will be when they take their first breath, because they are determined to make someone else responsible for their freedom.